Good Wednesday afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Morgan Wolf. Let's get to your top stories today. Some movement to end the Department of Homeland Security shutdown, but nothing is concrete yet. Lawmakers in both parties have doubts about a Republican proposal to fund DHS without money for immigration enforcement under ICE. Democrats are refusing to put money into it without major changes. They have repeatedly pushed to fund TSA and FEMA, but then in a second step, Republicans want to fund ICE through a separate bill that would not require Democratic support. President Trump says that he wants tougher voter ID laws attached to anything that Republicans pass. In the meantime, Department of Homeland Security officials are warning about the ripple effects that could last for months, even after the shutdown ends.
Every day the shutdown drags on moves us closer to a tipping point. And we know through experience it will take us about 2.5 days to recover from every day we are in a shutdown. If the shutdown ended today, we wouldn't catch up until July 3rd.
Also happening in Washington, D.C. right now, a live look at the Capitol, where tonight a young man who risked his life during the deadly Annunciation shooting is receiving a huge honor. Victor Grunewald is being recognized with a Congressional Medal of Honor for being a young hero. He is just one of 6 civilians to be recognized this year. The society says that Victor demonstrated extraordinary bravery, describing his actions as a symbol of hope and humanity for a community in crisis. You may remember our interview with his friend Weston shortly after the shooting.
I was like 2 seats away from the stained glass windows, so they were like, the shots were like right next to me. My friend Victor like saved me though, because he laid on top of me, but he got hit.
An interview that moved people across the world. Weston did undergo a successful surgery to remove a bullet fragment lodged in his neck. Victor also shot in the back and spent 2 days in the hospital before going home. Well, here back in Minnesota, the legislative package introduced in response to the shooting includes a proposal to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. A Senate committee advanced that proposal, but it has stalled in the House, facing unified Republican opposition. They suggest that putting more of a focus on mental health and school security would be better suited. Also new today, the United States trying to end the war in Iran. Officials sending a 15-point plan to draw down, even as President Trump sends more troops to the region. We know right now that at least 1,000 paratroopers will be sent to that area. The Pentagon is also in the process right now of sending 5,000 more Marines and thousands of sailors as well. President Trump says that the U.S. is in negotiations right now with Iranian officials to end the war. Pakistan is confirming today that it has received that peace plan from the United States, that country acting as a mediator between the countries right now. President Trump expressing optimism, saying that Vice President J.D. Vance was now involved in the talks. NBC's Ralph Sanchez reports from Qatar.
President Trump continues to strike an optimistic note that a negotiation with Iran could lead to an end to this war potentially sometime soon. He says that there are many points of agreement between the two sides, including that Iran has agreed that it will never have a nuclear weapon. But here in the Middle East, it remains much less clear whether these negotiations are actually significantly progressing. We do know that Pakistan has emerged as a potential mediator in these talks. The Prime Minister of Pakistan has said that if the Iranian and U.S. sides want to meet, they could do it in the Pakistani capital, Islamabad. At this point, there is no timetable or any schedule for those meetings, and we don't know whether those would be direct negotiations or indirect negotiations through mediators. The president says that on the American side, these talks are being handled by Steve Witkoff, his go-to peace envoy, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, but also Vice President J.D. Vance. What is much less clear is who is involved on the Iranian side, given that so many senior Iranian officials have been killed at this point. The president says that it is not the new supreme leader of Iran, who has not been seen or heard from in public since he succeeded his father as that country's supreme leader. He does say that in a slightly cryptic comment in the Oval Office that Iran has given the United States a gift that is valuable, that is to do with oil and gas and the Strait of Hormuz. And the president says that that gives him confidence that whoever it is they are talking to on the Iranian side does indeed have the authority to make a deal. Raf Sanchez, NBC News, Doha, Qatar.
New today, we are learning that human and technological errors may have led to the deadly crash at LaGuardia Airport earlier this week. Federal investigators already uncovering cracks in the safety system that is meant to prevent crashes just like this one. First, a ground radar detection that is supposed to alert air traffic controllers of impeding crashes never went off. And the fire truck that was crashed into did not have a transponder relaying where it was at all times.
There are multiple layers of defense built in to prevent an accident. So when something goes wrong, that means many things went wrong.
If this truck would have had a transponder, it very well could have provided that alert that the controller could have used.
Staffing for the control tower also being investigated. So far, investigators have received conflicting information about who gave the go-ahead for that truck to pass. Right now, Minnesota is suing the federal government following 3 shootings during Operation Metro Surge. The state hopes that this will get them access to evidence that the federal government unprecedentedly denied them. The Hennepin County Attorney, Minnesota Attorney General, and the BCA filed the suit, saying that local agencies have the right to conduct their own investigations into the fatal shootings of Alex Preddy, Renee Good, and the non-fatal shooting of Julio Sosa Solis. Federal officials have said that they have jurisdiction because it involved federal agents, but state agencies are also investigating and say that they have been shut out from key evidence.
There has to be an investigation anytime a federal agent or a state agent takes the life of a person in our community. And ultimately, the decision may be it was lawful. You don't know, but that's why you do the investigation.
The lawsuit was filed in Washington, D.C. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty and Attorney General Keith Ellison say that the decisions regarding those investigations are being made there. Right now, a bill aimed at fighting fraud in Minnesota is heading to the Senate after weeks of gridlock. The legislation could create a new statewide office of Inspector General. The independent office would focus on detecting and preventing fraud in state programs, but it's not a done deal. Some Democrats have raised concerns about the language in the bill and the cost of the new agency. If it passes, Governor Walz says that he would sign it. Ag Day at the state capitol is meant to be celebrating Minnesota farming, but this year it's highlighting a growing debate. Do farms actually have the workers that they need? Some groups say yes, pointing to migrant worker programs already in place, and others say that immigration crackdowns could leave some farms shorthanded. Heidi Wigdahl has more.
As farmers celebrate National Ag Day at the state capitol, they're also preparing for a new growing season that includes having to find workers.
Well, certainly we've heard some concerns, but realistically we haven't seen any firsthand examples of those concerns coming to fruition.
Dan Glessing, president of the Minnesota Farm Bureau Federation, says he's talked to farmers who use the H-2A program, which helps fill seasonal and temporary jobs by hiring workers from other countries.
They've been in conversations with their workers. They're ready to come for that seasonal work that they come up for every year or come over for every year. So we haven't really heard of much concern as far as a work shortage yet.
Right now, the labor situation isn't really anything new for agriculture. It's been an issue for the past decade.
Jenna Untied with Untied's Vegetable Farm in Waverly says they use the H-2A program. Their first set of employees arrived for the season, but even with the legal documents,
there is some concern with it because they've heard everything that has been going on here. So we've just really stressed to have their documents on them at all times if they do leave the farms.
When it comes to undocumented workers, the numbers aren't clear for Minnesota. But according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, more than 40% of hired crop farm workers in the U.S. hold no work authorization.
And these are individuals that have really built their life here in the U.S. We know that a lot of those people are afraid to go to work, unsure if they should go to work, things like that.
Heidi Wigdahl, KARE 11 News.
Minnesota AGR Commissioner Tom Peterson says that farm labor concerns are not new, but he says in part, quote, "We also have migrant workers that could bypass Minnesota and easily find work in another state that hasn't faced immigration pressure." He added that Minnesota farmers are resilient and resourceful, but says that they'll need to rely on those two qualities to weather this latest issue. Right now, some parents in the state's largest school district are saying enough is enough. They are fighting back against layoffs and a looming budget deficit across the Anoka-Hennepin School District. They started a new group called Parents for Good, a nonprofit that in part supports a levy to try and right a deficit of nearly $6 million next year. The district is also now laying off 75 staff members. It is a contentious issue that board members have disagreed on, even at Monday's meeting.
We can decide to have high quality schools. We can choose to fund our schools. It's our choice. And I think that we've been made to feel like that choice isn't really ours.
Keep in mind, Anoka-Hennepin narrowly avoided a teacher strike this winter. There is a state law requiring a school board to take up a levy if voters get enough people to petition for one, although it's an approach rarely used. Stick with us. We got more news and weather coming up after the break.